Hey everybody, Leroy here. As you've probably seen, Komplete 14 is a thing. It's been announced and is released into the world. So in this video, I thought I would just do a bit of a track breakdown using Komplete sounds within one of my own tracks. Let's get into it. So as you can see, I have a bit of a track structure kind of loosely put together using clips and scenes in Ableton, and every sound in this track is using something from Komplete in some form or another. So let's kind of break it down. So probably the best place to start is the beats, and as you can see here, I've got a track with a bunch of grouped tracks with kind of percussion elements. And this instance here is I'm using track 01. So this is a bass and a kick drum sort of plugin. This is a really amazing plugin for creating kick and bass grooves. In this particular kind of genre, the kick and the bass make up a really enormous part of the overall sound of this, and so it's really great to have a plugin that kind of handles both. Here you can see I can sequence my kick, in this sequence. And this is the kick drum generator. And then over here in the green, I can sequence my bass sounds. So I've got a little bass sequence here. And what's really great about this is I can see the relationship between the bass sequence and the kick sequence using this particular sort of sequencer. And I can achieve all my bass sounds and modulation and everything like that using this. And it makes it really good because I'm able to really mix those sounds together and make them sound really tight and punchy. I can control the level and add compression and EQ to all of those sounds using this. Sounds really good. And I have the solid bus compressor. This is Native Instruments kind of like compression effect that I'm used to just really glue that whole sound together and just make it sound really nice and punchy. I love this instrument. I don't really see it getting used enough. I reckon it's a really powerful thing. And if you're worried about being able to separate the kick and the bass sounds, you do have the ability to be able to use just the bass or just the kick instrument and have them on individual tracks for mixing and mastering. But I really like the ability to be able to punch in just the kick and the bass on the one channel. There's not really much else I really need to do this. It's pretty solid. I'm just going to move on from there. Next up, I have an instance of battery. So this is kind of providing like all of the top percussion layer, and the cool thing about this is using a expansion pack which is new to Komplete 14 called Infinite Escape, and it gives me all of the amazing drum sounds that come within this particular expansion. Now, if you own Battery and you haven't really used it, you should definitely dive in and check this out. Battery is such an awesome plugin for programming drums. It's kind of like a drum rack in Ableton Live, except it gives you so much more for really fine-tuning all of your sounds. Plus, the really cool thing about this is it has all of the preset sounds from this particular expansion pack called Infinite Escape, which really focuses in on kind of like minimal and micro kind of house sounds. And so it has all those presets there and ready to go. So if you're kind of new to drum programming and getting all your sounds like really nice and tight, these expansion packs combined with Battery make a really great way of programming your drums. The sequence itself is being programmed within this clip here. And so each of these little sounds here you can hear, they're all kind of just like those little micro percussive elements that really just sort of like help kind of kick that groove along. So we get lots of hats, little percussion sounds, open and close hats. But I'm not using the kick in this because that's coming from track 01. So when we combine those two sounds together, we get this. What's really cool as well with the Komplete Kontrol keyboards is it has like all the sounds mapped and color coded to the key, so it's really easy to find the sounds that you're using. They're all color coded to the cells inside battery. Nice. Moving along, this is another instance of battery. This is just solely focused on open hats. And this just really helps to kind of inform the groove and really cut through the mix of the other percussion elements. So this is just the open hi-hats. And now with the open percussion. And let's bring back in the kick. Nice. Now there's just two more layers to this drum sort of arrangement. I have a loop. Again, I'm using a loop from the Infinite Escape expansion pack. And the cool thing about this loop is being played straight out of Komplete Kontrol. It's possible to load loops directly into the Komplete Kontrol browser and just play them via MIDI. You can just trigger them via MIDI and you can play it relative to the pitch on your keyboard to kind of make them sound different. But what's really cool about that is it will stay in time with your track. It's locked to the tempo. So this is a clap loop, and I also have a shaker as well, which all of those combined sounds a bit like this. So you can really hear how that clap and that shaker just sort of sit under the mix and really just give it that extra groove and shuffle. So next up we have some chords. I introduced some chords into this track to kind of like, fill out some of that space and give it some melodic elements. And in this instance, I've used a instrument called Super 8, which is, Native Instruments' take on, vintage polysynths. It sounds a little bit like this. I'm a big fan of, Junos and Jupiters and those kind of vintage polysynths, and this is a really kind of great take on that sort of thing. This synth is really capable of like really powerful sounds that kind of go well beyond what, those original instruments were able to do, but it still retains the character of the filter, as well as those kind of like digital oscillator sounds that were really prevalent in like Junos and Jupiter synthesizers. So now let's take a listen to just those sounds with the kick and the drums. And you can see the actual arrangement of those chords is really, really simple. It's just 3 chords that just kind of land on the offbeat. That's a sequence kind of between the kick and the snare. This is a really classic programming technique for chords with this type of house music. It really kind of adds to the groove. Next up, I have an instance of Massive X, and it sounds a bit like this. Now, I'm pretty intimidated by Massive X, I've got to be fair, and I haven't really used it as much as I probably should have, but I really wanted to use it in this instance because new to Komplete 14 adds a bunch of really great new presets. I've kind of used one from this preset bank here called Mechanics, which has some really gnarly kind of like bass and sort of, interesting sounds. Super EDM and super electro, but I thought I could really use it in a kind of sparing, limited way within this track. And together with the chords and the bass and the drums, it sounds like this. So the arrangement for this sound is really, really simple. It's literally just 2 notes, an octave apart, and it just kind of adds almost more of a percussion element than really anything melodic, but it kind of sits nicely in conjunction with the chords and everything else that's going within the drums. Next up, I've got the atmospheres. Now, these are a really kind of like important part for, many forms of electronic dance music. It really adds tension and a lot of sort of like anticipation, and as well as really fills out a lot of the space, particularly through drops. Now, I've got this sequence set up here. Which ultimately I want to be sort of like the drop of this track. So when I get to the arrangement stage, I'll be introducing these sounds. Now, I was looking for something a little bit ethereal and something that's quite immersive, and I found a patch from this instance of Deft lines, which is new to Komplete 14, which I hadn't used before, and I was really keen to experiment with. And it sounds like this. Now, this is a Kontakt instrument. It's part of the Play series, and I really, really love these instruments. They're super easy to use. The layout of the instrument is like just kind of set out really simply. We've got this blendable sound source here, so we're kind of combining 2 sounds together to achieve this really interesting sound. And I kind of like developed this for, all the producers out there kind of making trap and drill and all that kind of sound. But in this instance, I use this for a completely different genre, which is something that's really great about these instruments is no matter what kind of like genre and I say these are kind of sort of directed to, they're always applicable to many other different forms of electronic music. So that layer there is also combined with an instance of Ashlight. Now, this is a really amazing, incredible instrument that's new to Komplete 14, which is a granular synthesizer that kind of specializes in like immersive atmospheres and, really kind of like incredible sounds. It really is like a sound designer's dream. And you can see what's going on here is this instrument is actually kind of like blending sort of 2 sound sources together. We have a granular synth element over here combined with this sample. And you can use this sort of like modulation source here to kind of like morph between each layer to create really interesting new sounds, as well as add effects and even sequencing possibilities as well. So now let's hear this with that other sound combined. So you can see how the relationship between these 2 sounds really creates some space and really contrasts with the rest of the track, really adds some sort of tension in anticipation for a drop. Nice. Now there's one more element in this atmospheres group I've got, and that's actually an instance of Analog Dreams. This was probably one of the first Play Series collection instruments that NI dropped, I think back in Komplete 12, and it's probably one of my favorite, and I still use it all the time. So no matter how many times Komplete or update with new software instruments, I'll still be using this amazing instrument. Analog Dreams is certainly kind of towards the more sort of like synth pop kind of world, but it uses the same kind of like blendable sound source. So we've got these two layers, A and B, which we can sort of layer sounds on top of one another. There's also the ability to be able to sequence in modulations via a step sequencer, add in heaps of effects, and all that kind of really good stuff. And it sounds, in this scenario, a bit like this. The relationship between these three atmospheres really, I feel, creates a really nice kind of tension that really kind of like brings you out of the original track and provides that atmosphere that's desired to get right back into the drop again. I really love the relationship between these three sounds. I really love how they kind of move and swirl. So there you have it. That's how I use Komplete within my productions. There's a lot of new stuff here that I'm loving as well, particularly all of those new like granular synth instruments. It's great to see them come on board. So let us know in the comments how you use Komplete and the things that you've been enjoying. But until next time, I'll check you later.